City Recorder, please take roll.
Booth Councilor Turley.
Here.
Council President Goodhouse.
Here.
Councilor Newton.
Here.
Councilor Lube.
Here.
Councilor Anderson. Councilor Anderson.
Mr. Nola, do you see him on the feed?
Yes, there he is.
I'm here. Sorry, guys, I was late.
Okay.
And Mayor Snyder.
Here. All right, as has become our custom during COVID, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance on our own. So please mute yourselves and do the pledge by yourself. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nolip. Let's move on to staff or council. Do we have any non-agenda items for tonight?
Staff have no non-agenda items, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We'll move on to follow-up to previous public comment. City Manager Wine, any?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any follow-up. There's public testimony offered on the same topic, which is the outreach and input that we've been getting from Ascension Drive neighbors, and I'll address that. I'll address that in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, we did receive 11 pieces of public comment for this meeting, and I think all 11 of them were related to Ascension Drive. That is item B on the public comment agenda. So City Manager Wine, do you want to summarize and respond to that?
Sure, I can do that. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I thought it was coming later. So as you noted, we've received correspondence from neighbors along Ascension Drive, and I received an update from our city engineer, Lori Faya, late last week about Ascension Drive. So our Public Works Director, Brian Rager, Lori, our city engineer, and Tegan Enlow, our engineering, or she's our principal engineer, I think. They've been holding individual teams meetings with each of the residents who live in the S-curves last Tuesday and Wednesday on Ascension Drive. The goal was to have meetings with those who would be directly impacted by the decision about removal of parking. So staff had individual conversations with these 9 sets of homeowners, and then one neighbor down the street who we have been working with over years related to speeding issues, which are the most common complaint on Ascension Drive. Our staff is in the process of compiling all the comments. They were generally good conversations, and the goal was to hear the concerns and issues that neighbors had about loss of parking and also speeding and the volume of traffic on the street, all of which have been longstanding complaints and concerns. So the focus, I mentioned what the focus of the calls was: listen and consider the neighbors' concerns and issues. We have an engagement consultant called JLA. They're going to be putting together a web page to post information, including everything the city has sent out so far about Ascension Drive, and also answers to some of the questions that we've received since from all the neighbors, not just the ones on the S-curves. And there will be an opportunity to provide more comment through that website so that everybody can see both the information and the questions that are being raised. That website is the web page will be up by the 15th, which is next week, and we'll be sending links to the website to all the neighbors who we've been talking to. Then our staff will consider the comments that have been received, and within a couple of weeks, they're planning to put together a final decision about the parking in the curves. So that gives another couple of weeks for final and other comments that might come in. And given the number of concerns that are being expressed about speeding issues, which are still with us, We'll be looking into additional things that the city can do for traffic calming and speed control there that we can reasonably offer and that will work with the way the street is set up. So I think most of you are aware of that is the state of things on Ascension Drive. And we're also, we're going to be getting help from our communications consultant about ways to address and have these kinds of neighborhood meetings that are being asked of us, because there are more places around the city where this situation is coming up. So our commitment to the council and also to the Ascension is we will stay in contact with them. A decision is pending about the parking decision itself in a few weeks. And in the team's discussions that I just referenced, that the information about the speeding issues will probably be about a month away. So that's an update about how our conversations on Ascension Drive are going.
From a it sounds like from your report that you're envisioning this as a staff level decision. What level staff person is going to make that final decision?
My understanding about these decisions is that they are with the city engineer. So that's she's the one who has the authority to make these decisions.
Okay. I'd
welcome your if you have any.
Did you say comments?
If council has any questions or comments, I'm available.
Councilor this has gotten enough attention and we've received enough comments. I think it's reasonable to take a few moments here. Councilor Anderson, do you have anything that you want to share, any perspective you want to add?
No, I'm just going to wait, like everybody else, to see the results of the engineer's findings.
Council President Goodhouse?
No, not just that we keep updated on this, and then that we're informed about this before any decisions made.
Yeah, I actually think City Manager Wine, that would be a comment I would make too, is that I think it would make sense that the council get briefed on what the decision is, perhaps even get our questions answered as well, if depending on what the decision may be.
Oh, go ahead, Council President. One other question too. This is related but not related, just with public comment. I know that I brought up last time. Are we working on a way that we can have people call in for public comment, or did no one choose to tonight?
I believe that the same methods for public comment that you saw available at the Budget Committee are also available and advertised for folks on the council meeting. So the 11 or so comments that the mayor referenced that were provided to you ahead of time, what we're notifying people to do is if they have comments to send them in by 4:30 on the day of the meeting, and that's the source of these comments.
Okay, but people can call in during public comment if they want to talk about this or any other topics?
I believe so. I'll double check with, I know Mike Nolip is on the line. Maybe he can confirm whether or not our call-in option is available for council meetings.
The call-in option is available for council meetings, although we have not, it has not been requested yet for council meetings, so we can definitely make that available in future meetings.
I know it will be available for the budget hearing, which is coming up next week.
Yeah. Right. I don't know how the other councilors feel, but I'd like to make that option available.
All right. Anything else, Council President Goodhouse?
No.
Councilor Newton.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know staff's been working really hard on this. Are we in a hurry to make a decision on this? Sounds like the folks, I just had a chance to read all 11 in between our study session and this meeting. And sounds like people are feeling like they want more time to feel heard. I guess I'll shorthand it that way. Are we in a hurry to make this decision, or do we have time that we can make sure that people feel like their questions are answered and, you know, we're clear about why the decision that's being recommended is recommended?
My understanding is there's not anything that would lead us to be in a hurry. And my understanding is our Public Works Director, Mr. Rager, is also on our meeting tonight. So if you have anything to add, Mr. Rager, please do.
Thanks.
Good evening. Brian Raker, Public Works Director. Marty, you said it well. We are taking the time to listen to what all the neighbors have to say. They're obviously very passionate about this issue, especially the speeding. That's what we heard loud and clear last week, was that the primary concern is speeding. So we will take it all in. This was really just the beginning of a dialogue with the neighbors. The interactive website, we're looking forward to having that in place so that we can have additional back and forth with them all. And we'll take as much time as we need to.
Okay, Councillor Lube, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have more of a statement / comment. Reading through a lot of, the public testimony that was sent, it sounds like the feedback from, the residents who have met with staff sound honestly frustrated. I know they're frustrated with the whole process of how this has gone, but, they indicated that they felt meeting with staff was just procedural and the decision has already been made. So if we are getting all of their feedback and looking at all potential solutions, I would just hope that we continue to stress that maybe a final decision hasn't been made and we are listening to them and trying to find a solution, because it sounds like they're just feeling frustrated, not feeling heard. And so if we could just continue to emphasize that they are being heard and they are being considered and this is not a final decision, I think that would go a long way.
Youth Councillor Turley?
I don't have any additional comments at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll move on to the, oh, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to a report out from the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce. Jessica, are you on the line?
I am. Hello. Jessica Love, the Community and Membership Engagement for the Tigard Chamber of Commerce, here to give you an update on all that's going on. Our Leadership Tigard program met today and they learned about public safety. The class heard from the Tigard Police Department, Washington County District Attorney's Office, Family Justice Center of Washington County, the Commercial Crimes Unit, and then Tigard's Emergency Operations Center. Next month is going to be Nonprofit Day. Our Reopen Ready campaign that we partnered with the City of Tigard Economic Development Department on has over 50 businesses that have made the pledge to meet or exceed industry standards for customer safety during this time. And we're encouraging community members to look out for businesses that have the Reopen Ready signs, posters, and decals in their windows, and support the businesses that have agreed to keep their customer safety front of mind during this time of COVID-19. We have opened up and are now accepting requests for endorsement consideration for the November 2020 Tigard City Council races. Declared candidates and those that are undeclared but are considering running for Tigard City Council are highly encouraged to ask for endorsement during this time. And then, as an organization, the Tigard Chamber of Commerce has been watching what's been unfolding locally and nationally in regards to the death of George Floyd. And we have a serious and systemic issue with equity across many of our institutions and systems. This impacts people, communities, and businesses. The Tigard Chamber Board of Directors decided that we as a business organization needed to add our voice to raise awareness of this issue and released a statement on June 3rd. If you'd like to read our statement, it is available on our website on our equity page. And then Debbie, our CEO, gave a little background on the Chamber's internal work on our DEI on our blog called Growing Together, so we encourage people to look at that. We will be announcing the high school senior scholarship winners in the next week or so. And then our networking is still hosting virtually on Zoom. And then we have our first ever virtual speed networking in partnership with the Wilsonville Chamber of Commerce happening this Thursday at 7:30 in the morning. And then again, we would like you guys to save the date for the Tiger Chamber annual meeting, which is going to be Thursday, June 25th at 8 a.m. And it will be held virtually over Zoom. And this is where we're going to take a look back of what the Chamber has done over the last year and then take a look at the future of the Chamber. For the farmers market, we're officially open for the season. We're 2 Sundays down so far, and we just want to thank the Tiger community for continuing to support the market during this time, and then also following all of our safety guidelines that we've put in place. Our new location has been wonderful on Tigard Street, so we're open every Sunday, 9 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. on Tigard Street at Main Street, right next to Symposium Coffee and the Tiger Chamber of Commerce building. And then online ordering for the market is live. You can order online on an app called What's Good, and we'll be adding new vendors throughout the season. And then for the Tiger Downtown Alliance, the Art Walk and the Street Fair have been canceled for this year. The TDA is currently working on creating an art scavenger hunt through downtown Tigard with all of the beautiful art that we have. And that will hopefully be launching in July in place of Art Walk. And then we're currently in the process of brainstorming ideas on how to do a reopened downtown Tigard celebration that will take place of Street Fair while making sure that we maintain the safety guidelines. Does anybody have any questions for me?
It's very thorough, but I bet there may be questions. Any counselors have questions? Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Appreciate the thorough report out, and again, thank the Chamber for really partnering with us on the Reopen Ready campaign.
Thank you so much.
All right, Chief McAlpine, we have your update next, which will then be a lead-in to a broader discussion on race and justice actions. So, Chief McAlpine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Chief Kathy McAlpine. As you know, this is my time that's set aside to do my monthly dashboard report. And as important as I think that report is, given the turmoil in our country since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers and the deaths of several officers killed in the line of duty as a response to George Floyd's death, I would ask that we suspend my presentation and allow me to begin addressing some of the questions and concerns that we've heard during our Mayor's Facebook Live and all of you have been receiving from our community as well as myself, and would just like to draw our focus to those issues at hand, if that's acceptable.
Please.
Okay, I did present a PowerPoint that'll be powered up. Hopefully all of you received the written memo that has more depth to some of these responses. For those who aren't aware, there's a campaign or initiative called 8 Can't Wait Project or campaign, and it really calls for 8 specific use of force policies within a police department. And tonight I would just like to present what those 8 are and how the Tigard Police Department currently measures to those 8. First slide, please. So the first is to require officers to de-escalate situations. We have that covered in policy 300.3 in our overall use of force. And I'll say that even though we're touching on 8 tenets, our use of force policy is very thick and very comprehensive. The overall theme of how we approach force and how we evaluate is under the legal guise of Graham v. Connor, which the Supreme Court applies to Fourth Amendment objective reasonable standards, and usually any excessive force complaints are used with that Graham v. Connor in mind, which is, was the force reasonable and is it necessary? So we train to that law. We have the officers articulate why they had to use force, what their response was, and of course any de-escalation that occurred prior to using any force. And that is embedded in all of our training. The next tenet is prohibit officers to choke or strangle civilians. In November of 2008, as we were assessing our use of force section in preparation for accreditation, we noticed that the carotid control hold was still in our policy. And although it had not been trained and nobody had used it, as any policy, if you're not training, you shouldn't have it on there. And I was not a proponent of that particular technique, so it was removed. So in other words, it was silent. So as recent as yesterday, we went ahead and added 300.3.4, which says that it is not authorized or any type of hold that restricts somebody's breathing unless it is deadly force and the officer has to articulate those actions. But we don't train it. It isn't authorized. And we also have other parts of the policy where our use of force, our purpose and scope, what it's intended, and of course all the criteria for a deadly force application. So that is now in policy as of yesterday. The third one is require officers to intervene and report immediately. We have two sections in our policy. One in the use of force, duty to intercede, and everybody is mandated, should they see any excessive force, to immediately report it to an officer, to intervene while it's occurring, and then to report it to a supervisor. We also have it embedded in our conduct section. We also know that the police academy covers this, and it's reinforced in our training and our daily training bulletins. And the daily training bulletins are actually once a month. They cover about 20 to 25 different scenarios of our policy. So it's one way of keeping our policies fresh. And there's many times sections on use of force, discrimination, some of those other high liability policies. And they're given scenarios, and officers take those tests once a month. Next slide, please. Fourth is restrict officers from shooting at moving vehicles. We cover that in policy 300.4.1, shooting at or from a moving vehicle. It is prohibited unless, of course, there are no other options and the officer is facing imminent threat to themselves. So in other words, we do not allow it. Develop a force continuum. We don't have a force continuum. The Tiger Police Department did have one before 2009. In 2009, the Oregon Police Academy, DPSST, removed it from their training, and many agencies removed that. Right now, I would say it's roughly 50-50 around the country, whether a department has a force continuum. The Police Executive Research Forum, or PERF, does not recommend using it. Many legal advisors don't. And so again, we train to Graham v. Connor, because again, that's what the officer is going to have to be able to articulate. Was it reasonable and was it necessary? So that's why we don't meet that one at this time, but I would submit that our standard, our criteria is as high as it can be. The other is request officers to exhaust all other reasonable means before resorting to deadly force. This is in policy 300.3.2, factors used to determine the reasonableness of force, and there are many factors. And it's also covered in 300.4, deadly force application. And again, Graham v. Connor are applied. Our approach to force response is more in line with the concept of constitutional policing, and that's a four-legged pillar of are your policies lawful? Is your practices in place that speak to your core values? And are you accountable? Are you supervised and monitoring that? And the fourth and most important then, does it result in community trust? And so that's pretty much the tenets of constitutional policing. And next slide, please. So number 7 is require officers to give a verbal warning. We have that in two different sections of our policy, 300.4b on fleeing subjects, and also in the policy 309.4, verbal and visual warnings in our TASER policy. We train and give verbal warnings in all training disciplines. The standard is to give verbal warnings seeking compliance, and if time and circumstances allow, before using force. So not only do we give the warning, but try and allow the person to hear the warning and adhere to our commands before moving on to any type of force. And the last one is require officers to report the use of force and notify a supervisor. So in policy 300.5.1, we do have a reporting the use of force and notification to a supervisor. And those are reviewed by the supervisor who comes to the scene, talks to the person force was used on, any witnesses, and the officer, and that separate report is completed by the supervisor to include any video that's taken from the scene from our dash cameras and submitted up the chain where I see all use of force and have to sign off on them. And then our deadly force is reported monthly to the FBI and the state via the district attorney through Senate Bill 111. And then again, to give some context to this, what does that mean for the Tigard Police Department? For the last 2 years, our use of force statistics in 2018, 42,000 calls, meaning both calls for service and self-initiated. We had less than 1% use of force, so 0.13 or 57 events. And in 2019, a little less total calls with a 0.14, so again, less than 1%. And remind you that a reportable use of force could be, for example, we apply a taser and we miss the target, or there's clothing and it didn't have any impact. That's still a documented use of force. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, go back to any of these 8 if you have any questions.
So Chief, I just want to clarify, you've already made a change to one policy effective Monday. When will all officers have completed training on that change?
They received the directive yesterday, and because it is no change, they received that back in November of 2018. Putting it in the policy was just to make it clear to the public. We knew it wasn't authorized. We've never taught it even before my time. And so it was more of hearing from the community saying perhaps being silent wasn't clear to them that we do not allow it. So we made clear language that anybody who chooses to look at our policy would see that we do not allow it. But that it has not been utilized for many years with the department.
Thank you. Questions for the chief about her presentation? Youth Counselor Turley, let's start with you.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the department's quick response to checking in and making sure citizens were informed on the 8 can't wait policy. I think that's very important right now to be making sure that we're communicating that we're working on that issue. I don't have any additional comments off the top of my head, but I might have some later, so if we could circle back, that would be great.
Absolutely. And this is gonna morph into a conversation, Counselor Turley, so just speak up whenever you want, and I'll try to come back to you as well. Counselor Lube, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. I know, you spoke to the force continuum and the reason we don't have a policy. I'm just curious with the disconnect with a program like this with the 8 can't wait, if it's listed on here, but we have, you said the state says that this is not a recommended best practice. Can you speak a little bit to why there might be that gap?
Well, what I cannot speak to is the organization that has developed these 8, why they feel it's so important. And I will tell you that there are some departments that use it and others don't. And again, my understanding is it's pretty much split. Tacoma had one for many years, and to my knowledge, they still do. So I am familiar with it. But again, in Oregon, back in 2009, with the research and everything, it was recommended to go. The academy chose not to teach to it, and it was left to the individual agencies, and the agencies have gone away. What I do believe in, and I have observed through my time in Tacoma, federal lawsuits where officers are having to try and explain, if the subject does this, then I can only do this. And there's absent any significant training, that might be the best tool. It's a visual aid for an officer. But what legal advisors have said is it's fraught with, you can only live in a box, and there are so many variables. And so from a defense standpoint and from a training standpoint, by training to what the standard is that we're going to be held legally obligated to, is to teach Graham versus Connor, and really get into the minds of, was it reasonable and necessary, and reasonable for the officer's actions, and was it necessary to use the type of force that they used. But again, that's one that can be discussed by more of the chiefs, more of the academians. I would like to hear the big push over that, because like I said, there's been plenty of studies that say why we should be going away from it. So am I committed in stone? No, but I also think that we also have done very well training and teaching to the reasonable standard.
Thank you for that. No more questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lube. Councillor Anderson.
Good evening, Chief. Could you speak a little bit about your tactical gear and what some would call the militarization of the police?
Sure. Right now, I would say that probably the most perceived militaristic thing is external vests that maybe the Tigard Police Department wear. And you can thank me for that. That was one of the asks when I first got here, was external vests. There's a lot of value to that. I took kind of the pulse of what was acceptable in the region. All the other surrounding agencies had those. They do provide less weight to an officer around their lower back. And I don't know if that's being thrown in as part of the appearance of a militaristic look, but it has been well received from officers as far as ease of their tools on their chest, and the fact that it does not hurt their back, and they can ventilate. When they are writing their report, they're able to unzip and breathe a little bit. And as you can imagine, on a hot day, that's pretty important. That's about as far as our military tools, in my opinion, are. The rest is all standard. We do not have disorder response or riot gear. We did have. They've been in a shelf. We're now just purging those out. We haven't been part of the Washington County disorder response team for many years. So no officer is trained in that. No officer is being deployed as a regional team. So we don't personally have armored vehicles. We do participate in the tactical team for Washington County. They do have armored vehicles, and they do have ballistic helmets and shields. I should back up. We do have a couple of ballistic helmets that are issued, or that the sergeants carry along with the shield, should we get into a situation where we have to go into a tight, narrow hallway. Maybe it's immediate that we have to get in and can't wait. And so an officer would have a shield, and we would give them the helmet, because obviously they're not able to have their firearm out as much as they have the shield. So we do have that tool as well. But that's other than that, it's a standard firearms and a standard rifle and we have less lethal beanbag type munitions that we also can use, and of course our tasers.
Councillor Anderson, I would also add, Chief McAlpine and I got a message today, and we're in a dialogue with someone who is commenting even about the color of our vehicles and uniforms and the perception that that potentially has. So what someone might consider military-like or whatever, to some extent, is a little bit in the, from the perspective of the person who's viewing it. And I think that's important for us to also consider, because I don't know that I'm not sure I've ever thought of the color of a police car as being relatively more or less threatening, but someone else does, and so I now need to put that into my thinking, and I know the chief is too. Councillor Anderson, other questions for the chief?
No other questions. Thank you, Chief.
Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I just have a couple of questions. On the no force continuum, it sounds to me like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that using the accountability standard, if I can call it that, actually might hold an officer more accountable in a situation than following rules of a force continuum. For example, they could say they followed the rules of a force continuum on one hand, but on the other hand, if we don't have a force continuum and they have to, I'll use the word justify, which might not be a good word, their actions, that might actually give a higher standard in those cases. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Is that correct, or am I missing something?
Yes, because it's called objective reasonableness, and that's what the courts weigh when they hear all the facts and circumstances of an incident. So again, we're talking about those that are Fourth Amendment, unreasonable, unnecessary, excessive force complaints, and they're taking all the facts in. They're going to weigh it, was it reasonable and necessary? And I would ask Shelby Rahala if she would like to add anything as far as how the courts weigh that, not maybe specifically Graham v. Connor, but again, when they're taking all the facts into consideration. Well, if you train to what those standards are and you learn to articulate, so after a scenario, an officer has to explain, why did I do what I did? Because they're going to have to put it in a report. And if you're already thinking about that in that articulation, they're just better prepared in court and understand the responsibility. And Shelby, do you have anything else you can add?
I think not really. No, I think that is the standard, and as you mentioned earlier, how that would be viewed in a federal lawsuit is something that our department definitely considers.
Okay,
thanks, Shelby.
Okay, I just have one more question. The de-escalation training that's on the slide, I can't remember which number it is, but that's one of the things that's in our levy, the crisis intervention de-escalation training. Do you see that training looking different given where we are today with what's going on after the murder of George Floyd and what's going on with the concerns of our community?
I'm not so sure that it's going to look different. Of course, there's scenarios. So those who create the program may continue to do true scenarios. What I will say is I'm as big an advocate as I ever can be, and I think it's extremely important. And I am prepared to give a little bit more information on the particular type of training and also the challenges that we'll have in getting that training to us. I don't know if you want me to get into it now or if you'd like me to get into it a little bit later, but I anticipated you may want a little bit more information.
Councillor Newton, did you have more questions? I think you're on mute. Counselor Newton, you're still on.
Counselor Newton, muted.
There you go.
Sorry, no more questions. I would like to hear more about the training later, though.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Chief McAlpine, since I'm the chair of this meeting, I guess I'm going to interject and ask a question that's occurring to me about the de-escalation training. Are we, once we have everybody trained, is there any kind of a change in our policies around use of force that might be appropriate around requiring de-escalation as the primary tactic to diffuse any situation, or do you feel like that's already covered now, or could that be, because of additional training, could we be more forceful about pushing that point?
Great question, and I believe our use of force policies are very well laid out, because again, you can't just start at the lowest level and go up and work through all of them, because you're confronted with a firearm or a deadly weapon. You may not even get past the words out of stop, drop your weapon before you have to respond. And so it covers the gamut. What I think is going to come out of, or my outcome that I want from this training, is we learn different tools. So when we say de-escalation is an outcome, and sometimes our mere presence diffuses a situation, the tone of our voice, what this advanced training does is it talks about that, how you approach somebody in crisis, and they break it down into various different things, whether you're a veteran with PTSD, or you are just depressed or schizophrenia. They cover a lot of different symptoms and what might be triggers. And so when you get into a lot of those nuances and how, and the professionals are telling you how you might approach an individual who is in crisis at that time, those are additional tools. Just the mere fact that you understand what they may be going through and how their body is reacting may give you, you're not as threatened. You may know that they are going through something and how they work it out, and they're going to get more skills and techniques that may help them. It'll be the exact same training that the mental health response team gets, and they'll get a certification in that. And at this point, it's the Memphis model, and it's the only CIT training that is certified. So if we can make sure that is the model that we train to, I can see only better things coming out of this, both for our officers and for the community, especially the communities who are in crisis, or the families who have members who are in crisis, that are their adult child has autism and they're afraid to call us because they're in an episode, but they're afraid we might escalate it as opposed to de-escalate. I've heard those concerns, and so I'm hoping that we get more tools through this training.
Thank you, Chief. Council President Goodhouse?
Yes. One thing for the de-escalation training from when we were going through the levy, some officers I think have gone through that already. I think I know the answer already, but I'm just asking, are those officers going to go through the training again? And what's the strategy as far as once everyone goes through it for the continuation of that program as well? And then I have another comment after that.
No, they wouldn't go through the training unless perhaps they certainly wouldn't be the priority. We would get everybody else who hasn't, and patrol would be the first and foremost that would go through it. But maybe somebody who had it maybe 5-6 years ago, I think they should go ahead and go through it again. But again, we're going to get everybody who hasn't had it the first time. We want to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to just commend and say a great job with you and the other officers. Yesterday in Tigard, there was a Black Lives Matter march that started at downtown Tigard, went through City Hall. A lot of officers were there talking to people. I think the best way, for this really is to be out there, be present, and interact. And you guys did a great job. You were there. Is obviously reflective from being engaged in the community as far as the best way we really can do something about this is being listening available. And I want to just commend you on how available you are, responding to people right away and making yourself available. So thank you for doing that and representing the city in the way you do.
Well, I appreciate that, and it really is a testament to our community because I was invited, and that speaks to, again, the level of trust, the desire to be collaborative, to want to have a great interaction with the police. So I'm more honored the fact that I didn't insert myself into it, that I was asked and certainly didn't hesitate. And it was good to see all of you there. And the city manager and a lot of our community. And you're right, it was a long enough walk that we were able to have some meaningful dialogues walking to and from the city hall. So thank you for that recognition. And it was a huge success in my eyes because I believe it started grassroots of about 27 and grew quite rapidly.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to transition. Actually, Youth Councilor Tilly, did you have more to ask about now, or can I transition us to the broader conversation?
You're good to go in the broader conversation.
Okay. So the first thing I want to acknowledge is that the amount of time that we have on this agenda for this topic does not do this topic justice. It is not adequate, and I want to acknowledge that from the outset. We made adjustments to the agenda and are intending to really have this be the beginning of the council discussions about how to move forward. Last week, you may likely have seen, hopefully all the city councilors saw my challenge to the community and my acknowledgement and denunciation of George Floyd's death. I want to make sure that what we can't meet outside as a full council, and the public sometimes doesn't understand that, but I can't call 2 or 3 other councilors up and have a discussion about what we should do about something. So our conversations all have to be in public when we have a majority of the council. So that makes these discussions sometimes more challenging, or they're just more complicated and require a lot of coordination at council meetings. So we have 30 minutes set aside for this. I'm not going to cut it off if we're making progress. The other thing that I want to share is that in my communication to the community, I challenge the community to provide input, particularly people of color and members of the Black community, to provide input about how we proceed, what processes we should use to try to move this extremely important work forward. And I have received probably close to 100 different pieces of input from members all over the community with various thoughts and ideas and sharing their perspectives. But what I'm not getting a lot of or any of is responses to my question about process. For us to be able to be involved in meaningful dialogue, it's important that we figure out how we're going to accomplish this work. And I also don't want us, either as a city council or as a city or me as mayor, to be the kind of like I'm setting it up, this is how we're doing it, because I don't think that's the way to move forward in a meaningful way. So other councilors or other members of the city council, I want to open this up to you. You can share what you want, but we'd like to focus as best on what you think future actions should be. It'd be helpful to me if you talk about your perspective briefly about process, and we will start with who would like to start? Okay, Councilor Lube, you get to start since no one spoke up.
Yeah, I can start. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge, what the mayor was saying, that this is a difficult conversation, and I hope that it becomes community-led, and we spend a lot of time listening. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first is, as far as process is concerned, I think it's important that we talk to the community in a multitude of different ways. I think, everything from surveys that go out in the cityscape to interactive information we can have on the website. And I think if there's a way that we can figure out to meet in person, I know, buildings can be kind of difficult. Maybe this is something we can do outside once we get into phase 2, where we can have a significant amount of people outside, maybe at Cook Park, and have some technology there for us to have conversations. Or even my husband suggested if we get a big group together at Cook Park, each of us gets a different section and we have mini conversations in that area. But I think it's important to try to reach out to the city residents in a multitude of different ways, because we all communicate differently. I think the Facebook Live events that we do are great, and there is some interaction, but I feel like it's not the level of interaction that we need. And I would say when we do these face-to-face interactions, I want to make sure that we have a third party coming in to moderate these conversations. I think it's important that it's not coming directly from the city, and it's just coming from a neutral party who's managing this. The other procedure sort of thing that I think is really important is a separate listening session. And I know City Manager Wine spoke to this about speaking to the superintendent. I think it's important to gather parents and students and the school board to discuss the issue of school resource officers and really talk to the community that's directly impacted by that program. And so it would be a great opportunity to do a listening session on, those sorts of things. As far as, are we talking about suggestions or topics of discussion that we would like to see? Or would we just like to stick to this part of the conversation based on procedure and possible ways of communication?
Well, I don't want to cut off any dialogue, Councillor Lube. Why don't you continue? I don't want to cut anybody off.
Well, so how about this? How about those are sort of my procedure ideas of communication and topics of discussion. And if we sort of come back around and we talk to potential ideas of things we'd like to see and changes, then I can bring up my other list.
Okay, sounds good. Youth Councillor Turley.
Yeah. So I've been talking to a lot of students over the past week and a half, especially about how they feel about the addition of an SRO into schools, given that was just passed on the levy. And I would strongly encourage the listening sessions that were suggested, because I think a lot of students have had their opinions or views of the additional police officers in school been shifted over the past weeks. And so I think those conversations are really important, especially with the upcoming school year, to make sure that you're making students comfortable in that environment, especially with the possible addition of an officer, and making sure that you're helping schools get additional resources that they need. I know Tigard especially has been interested in getting more mental health resources, and so a lot of students view that as an alternative to an additional SRO. That would be important. And that's about all of the communication stuff that I have. I have a couple of other topics, but that's all that I for this item.
Thank you, Youth Councillor Turley. I appreciate that input, and I just want to emphasize your comments about having a robust dialogue with students in the school district and everybody involved. I think is critical on that topic. I also don't, like you were suggesting, I don't want to make an overnight decision or, a unilateral decision that we're stopping it, or yes, it's staying, or any of those decisions. I think it needs to be a dialogue. And so thank you for that input. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So speaking to process, I have been struck the last week and a half, just how, people that are Black experience things, and I don't. And listening to people talk about not feeling safe I heard one gentleman talk about having to have a conversation with his 8-year-old son that he doesn't think a man should have to have with his 8-year-old son. So I keep thinking about the importance of us listening and finding ways to do that. I know some people are comfortable with online. When I was making the calls for the levy, of course, I was talking to people that like to talk on the phone, but many of them said, I don't know if I'm going to hear back. If I send something online, you know, I do sometimes, but I don't know. And so I'm not comfortable. I don't feel like my input's going to matter because I'm not talking to a person about it. And so I was talking to the mayor, and to follow up on what Councillor Lube said, to start with, we might want to start inviting people to some gatherings. They could be small, in the park with social distancing, and then ask people to invite, tell people we want them to get themselves added to the list. We're limited, we can't just open it up to everybody, but if we know people in the community, social justice activists, or some of the folks that we know that are Black in our community, to start there, the students in our community that have concerns, and invite them to some conversations, and then tell others in the community we are listening, we want to hear about their experience and what's important to them and what they think, how they think our community could be better. You know, that's something I would think about doing to start with. The other thing is a little bit different, but I think the council re-looking at our priorities and our goals, it might be important to think of a more robust way to get our community involved in those discussions as well. Because again, the DEI work's really important, but I'm struck with how my experience is so different from other people's in our community. And it's important to me that everybody in our community can access the services we provide, and especially they feel safe, they feel comfortable approaching their decision makers and their elected officials with concerns they have. So I'll leave it there, but I think a way to get other ways, but to get people involved in conversations where they feel invited and encouraged.
So, Councillor Newton, I want to take an opportunity based on some of what you just said to share one of the stories that, you know, I received a number, maybe not a number, a few emails out of the 100 plus that we've received in comments that were questioning or challenging whether, you know, there are acts of racism or institutional racism at work in the Tigard community, and people who just, their perspective is it doesn't exist. And you were kind of sharing about how, you know, you have these experience, you know, you recognize listening to these experiences that they're just not like yours. And I guess a story that I think highlights this point and hopefully will once and for all clear up whether there is institutional racism and or you know, situations in our community where race is at play. I got a story from a member of our community who's a young Black woman who graduated from Tigard High School, has lived in Tigard, still lives in Tigard, and she was out drawing on the sidewalk with sidewalk chalk, which is an activity that happens in almost every neighborhood I've been in Tigard. Frequently happens in my neighborhood, happens on my own property. She recently had a situation where she was drawing with sidewalk chalk and had a police call that resulted in some what she described as very professional and appropriate Tigard police officers who responded to this very serious use of sidewalk chalk. I say that partly in jest, but partly this is not funny. It really is not. And that's her experience. That's her lived experience in Tigard this year. So if people don't think that this is happening, this is a young adult woman in our community coloring with sidewalk chalk. Think about that for a second. It's absurd. It is absolutely absurd. And for people that are denying that this happens, this kind of activity happens all the time. And all you need to do is talk to someone who is perhaps not like you, who has these experiences. So that's one story. The other story I would just highlight, and Youth Counselor Turley, maybe you can speak to this too, but my understanding is the school district, and I actually saw the communication as a parent, but the school district had to send actually an extremely strongly worded communication this week. Actually, I guess was it Friday? It's either Friday or yesterday. The days are all merging together, but a really serious communication about the flagrant use of inappropriate and disrespectful language, children in the school district engaging in extremely inappropriate conduct, mimicking George Floyd's death in a way that is very disrespectful and inappropriate. And I don't know, Youth Counselor Turley, if you want to comment on that. I assume you probably received that communication as well. Any comment there?
Yeah, just to provide some additional clarification, an email went out, I think you were correct, last Friday, from both principals regarding behavior that had been seen on social media from students that was mocking the death of George Floyd, and so students took that response pretty seriously. I know that there's a march going on tomorrow as well, from students that's being organized, or not tomorrow, my bad, Thursday, that's being organized as well. So yeah.
Thank you. And I'll thank you, Youth Counselor Turley, and we'll continue on. Counselor Anderson, do you want to provide your comments and questions?
Yeah, first of all, Mayor, I didn't get to talk to you before you put your statement out, but I thought it was very strong and I wholeheartedly agreed with it. And I think you had some good comments from the community on that. You know, my feelings, of course, everybody was very saddened, but as far as process, you know, talking to Black friends of mine, they just want to be on a level playing field, and they have to jump over many, many hurdles just to get to the starting line where we would normally start. So if we can identify those barriers, maybe make a list of barriers of employment, things that I don't notice, but they're out there, and maybe we can distribute those to the business community as far as hiring practices, or maybe in Tiger Life or some sort of thing. But maybe that would be a good way to listen to the folks who are out there experiencing these things. Other than that, no comments. You know, we do a very good job with roads and sewers and parks and planning, and this is new. Obviously, we've been kind of working on it on a general sense, but this is a whole new ballgame for us. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Council President Goodhouse.
Yes. I mean, listening to everyone and my thoughts, I always kind of go by the belief is a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. There's a lot of processes that should be in place or that want to be in place, but we may not always know. And the best thing that really helps is for us to figure out how to have those listening sessions, how to have that communication. I know the city has tried to do some things, but it may be things that are in the right direction, might be in the wrong direction, might not be relevant at all. But the biggest thing is kind of, as the mayor said, is I know a lot of people, there's a lot of motions right now, there's a lot of comments being made and things, but the best thing right now is what can be done and what direction should we go, and what really are the things that we should, and what are we doing that we don't know. As far as I'm hearing from the council, everyone, you know, we're listening, we want to hear, And that's what I want to do is what's the best way that we can meet everyone, get together, have a conversation about this and do similar things what the chief did. It might be some things that we can do right away that we didn't know. Maybe it's a practice we're not doing, but just having it in print makes a huge difference. But we can't do what we don't know. And I'm as well as what the mayor said, I'm making a pledge to listen and make changes and work on it, but need to hear and talk to everyone and have the voices of many, so we make sure that we're representing everyone, not a few.
Well, and this needs to result in action and sustained and permanent change. It is, I think, part of what has frustrated members of the marginalized communities that we're talking about, or traditionally marginalized, is that honestly, people like us have been talking about this stuff for decades to centuries, and you know what? We are still where we are, and that's pathetic. And so I guess that's my way of saying we cannot let this moment slip by, and we must be action oriented in a meaningful way, and the results are going to be permanent change that we can measure in things like family wealth, education, employment, like the things that ultimately are what lead to the American dream. Way too many people don't even have access to it and to the American dream. We keep talking like they do, but we don't take action that's meaningful to make it happen. So that's my commitment, is to not back down from that. So I hope you all are okay with me holding our entire city, including the council, the staff, and every single resident to that accountability over my time as mayor. So we're kind of at a moment here. We've just gotten quite a bit of input. City Manager Wine, I kind of want to ask you as well. Do you have either questions or clarifications about the dialogue the council's had, mostly around process, which has been helpful to me? I certainly want to get input from our community members that I've been talking with too. But City Manager Wine, do you have any questions about what's been described?
I don't have any questions now.
Okay. Council, I'm going to recommend that we continue like the sections that I think Councilor Lube, are you okay with holding your information to our next discussion as we try to work through some of the process stuff, or would you really like to make your comments?
No, I can wait.
Okay.
Can I make a quick suggestion?
Sure.
One thought just popped in my head. Rather than maybe if we're doing sessions or I know we do these council outreaches, maybe we make it a statement of this is what the session is exactly about, so we have more people to talk about that, rather than doing a shotgun approach of we're doing a council listening session. We'll say this is the exact topic, whatever the title may be, but we all need to get feedback on what the city should be doing, what things we should be looking at, what processes we should be putting in place to more attract that exact conversation.
Well, and Council President Goodhouse, not only that, but I think that the people that have communicated to me in the last week in response to the statement and the city's position all need to receive personal invitations to the event. It's not just putting some random general thing out to social media is not, in my opinion, not acceptable, or not enough, not nearly enough.
No, not, and I mean a random thing, but actually, yeah, it's a specific and invites and everything as the sort.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's
Councilor Newton.
I just wanted to reiterate really quickly the point you made about we need to be prepared to take action. I agree. We need to listen, and as we're listening, if there are things we can do, I think we need to do them. So I'll just say that real quick.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for engaging in that dialogue, and this is definitely the longest meeting I've ever facilitated to getting to the consent agenda. That is the next item on the agenda, is the consent agenda, and I even want to talk about things on the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is used for routine items such as approval of minutes, receipt of council meeting calendars, proclamations, appointments to boards and committees, and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements with partner agencies. Approval may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Anyone may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. On the consent agenda today, we are going to be receiving and filing the certified results of the local option levy vote. And then we will also be, and I'm excited to be holding it up here, proclaiming Pride Month. And so I want to read that proclamation before we vote on the consent agenda. So we are going to proclaim June as Pride Month, whereas June is celebrated as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month nationwide to commemorate the beginning of the Stonewall Uprising in New York, and whereas Tigard is a community that includes and values its lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, queer, asexual, and allied LGBTQIA residents, and whereas Tigard's LGBTQIA+ community is a diverse and essential part of our city who contribute to the widespread academic, economic, artistic, political, and social spheres within and around the Tigard community. And whereas Pride Month in Tigard is meant to raise awareness of the prejudice and discrimination still facing members of the LGBTQIA+ community and honor their power and perseverance in fighting discrimination in all forms. And whereas everyone is entitled to equal rights freely granted to all Americans, regardless of race, religion, gender identity, or sexual orientation. And whereas our city will stand up to hurtful speech and reinforce our efforts to attract a workforce that is representative of our community so that Tigard becomes a more vibrant, diverse, and livable community. And whereas the valuable contributions made by our family, friends, and neighbors who represent the diverse Tigard LGBTQIA+ community promote innovation and positive change with lasting effects within our city. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jason B. Snyder, Mayor of the City of Tigard of Oregon, proclaim June 2020 Pride Month. So that is the statement, and I actually want to make a quick comment. I probably should have talked about this in the prior discussion, but I want to talk about, just briefly recognize the particular discrimination and around members of both the Black community and other peoples of color who are also members of other disadvantaged communities, and how that intersectional, just the significant issues that can occur, and even more dramatic acts of prejudice towards members of more than one of these communities at a time, and that puts some members of our community at significant risk. So I think it's fitting to recognize and just comment on that briefly. That needs to be part of our broader conversation. With that said, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Councillor Lube, I move for the adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councillor Newton?
Yes.
Councillor Lube?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes. Okay, consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 4. I'm very excited about this. Youth Councilor Turley, thank you for your help, and Councilor Lube, thank you for your help in interviewing our youth counselor candidates for the following academic year, and we are here with an agenda item to appoint Emilio Calderon as the youth city councilor for the upcoming year. And I believe Mr. Calderon is on the line. Normally in person, I would be congratulating you and offering you a City of Tigard pin, which I can't do tonight, but maybe I'll mail one to your house. Emilio, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for applying, and we're very excited to have you. City Council, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Newton, and I'm going to make a motion, but before I do, I want to say that I've had the privilege of working with Emilio as the chair of the Tigard Youth Advisory Council, and be forewarned, he is going to keep us on our toes. He is a ball of fire. So anyway, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution appointing Emilio Calderon as the next Youth Advisory Council. As the next Tigard City Council Youth Counselor.
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councilor Newton,
Yes.
Councilor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. And with that, Mr. Calderon, congratulations. You are the next youth city councilor to the Tigard City Council.
Thank you, I'm honored.
And we, I for one will appreciate you keeping us on task. Councilor Lube, you got a little distraction there. Anyway, Emilio, thank you very much for applying. We look forward to having your participation. As you can tell, the events of the last couple of weeks are going to make your continued participation and just youth involvement in the city is even more important perhaps than it was before. And so I want to thank you for stepping up, and we look forward to having you keep us on our toes. All right, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is considering approval of a resolution of necessity for Fruing Street storm drainage easements. Project Manager Peck, staff report. Mike, is he on the line?
He is. Let me see if I can unmute him. Hold on one second. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm having technical difficulties.
No worries.
I see you and I hear you. My name is Jeff Peck. I'm a project manager in Public Works. I'm here to present on the Fruing Street Stormline Replacement Project. This is a stormwater major maintenance project designed to replace storm pipe and Fruing Street determined to be in poor condition. This project will also replace 2 metal culverts at the low point of Fruing Street that are in poor condition as well as undersized, with 3 new culverts and head walls at each end to better convey storm water through the drainage course. Approximately 175 feet of 12-inch main line will be installed in the street and will provide structures and access for maintenance of the new pipe. We'll also be installing structures in the roadway for access to the 3 24-inch culvert pipes to allow for maintenance of them as well. I'm here to ask council to consider approval of a resolution of necessity to begin negotiations with 2 property owners that are impacted by the culverts that we're planning to install for the acquisition of temporary construction easements and permanent storm drainage easements, and if necessary, to condemn the property and take immediate possession as a last resort if good faith negotiations fail.
Okay. Council questions. Councilor Anderson. Anything?
No questions right now.
Councilor Lube.
No questions.
Councilor Newton.
Yeah, Jeff, real quick question. I see, according to the agenda item summary, that we're at 90% design. The property owners that are subject to this resolution of necessity, they know it's coming. I assume that we're going to be.
They do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, we've met with both properties and talked about this, and they're both aware that we're in front of council for this resolution of necessity.
Thank you.
Jeff, are either of them having problems because of the current condition of things or not?
One of the apartment complexes, the roadway adjacent to their access, it gets quite a bit of storm water during heavy storm events, possibly coming up through the catch basin. And, you know, the additional culvert here will allow the system to take up to the 25-year storm event. Right now, we're at a 5-year storm event. So this is a big improvement for both properties, and they both understand that this will help.
Thank you. Council President Goodhouse, questions?
No questions.
Youth Councilor Turley?
No questions.
Council, a motion.
This is Councilor Anderson. I move to approve resolution number 20-29.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Oh.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution 20-29, a resolution declaring the need to acquire property for the purpose of constructing public utilities and related improvements adjacent to and along Southwest Brewing Street from Southwest Pacific Highway to Ash Avenue, and authorizing eminent domain and immediate possession if necessary.
City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes. Okay, resolution number 20-29 is adopted unanimously. Item number 6 on the agenda is consider a resolution to jointly accept Cdbg entitlement with Washington County and remain a home consortium member. Senior Planner Warren, staff
Jeff
report.
Peck
is now exiting.
Good evening, Mayor Snyder and councilors. My name is Skylar Warren, Senior Planner in the Department of Community Development. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for a very great conversation tonight. I think this item definitely lends itself to a conversation of where the city is going to go in the future. So I'm here tonight with the second and final of 2 actions that are necessary for the city to accept entitlement under the Community Development Block Grant Program. Tonight's action will actually authorize 3 separate actions, one granting signing authority to the city manager for 2 separate intergovernmental agreements that formalize the city's agreement to accept joint entitlement with the Washington County Office of Community Development and to remain a member of the Home Consortium. So that's a mouthful, but there are 2 separate programs, and I'll go into that a little bit at the end. And then the final action will be to formally notify the HUD office in Portland of the city's election. And give me just a second, and I'm going to get the PowerPoint up here. All right, hopefully you can see that. So tonight's action follows on the council's action of April 24th.
Skylar, we actually can't see it.
I can see it, but I'm on a desktop.
Mr. No, well, okay, so maybe it's just me.
I can't either.
I can see it.
So I see the PowerPoint box popping up now.
Skylar, I presented for you, so if you just let me know when you want me to advance slides.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. So this follows on the council's action on April 21st to authorize an operating agreement setting out the terms of the city's joint entitlement with Washington County. Next slide. So you will have seen a lot of this information before, but I do want to provide it as a refresher to the council and also to make sure that the public is aware of the background on this program. So the Community Development Block Grant Program is a federal program that's been around for 20 years now. It provides grants to states, cities, and counties throughout the country on a formula basis based on population and poverty rates. And the purpose of this program is to originally to provide decent housing and suitable living environment and to expand economic opportunities. The program has been interpreted to cover a wide variety of actions under that guidance. Next slide. When the program started in 1979, none of the cities that are in Washington County qualified with a high enough population for Cdbg funding on their own. And so a policy advisory board was created by Washington County, and they formed a consortium and qualified the entirety of the urbanized portion of Washington County as a group. And since that time, they have invested over $69 million from the Cdbg program. Primarily, that money has gone into programs related to infrastructure improvements, public facilities, public services, and housing improvements. Next slide. As some of the cities across the county have grown, they have elected to move forward with either joint entitlement or full entitlement on their own. And so Beaverton elected in 1994 to leave the consortium and take the federal formula on their own. Hillsborough elected joint entitlement in 2000 and full entitlement in 2018. All other cities in the county currently, including the city of Tigard, participate as consortium members. Next slide. So we qualified first in 2015 when our population crossed the threshold of 50,000. And then for the past two cycles where we were eligible, the city opted to remain in the consortium. Next slide. So every 3 years, the HUD office notifies the city of its eligibility to participate in the Cdbg program. And we have three options each time to either elect full entitlement, meaning that we take the entire amount that we would be allowed under the federal formula. We take no entitlement on our own. We just continue to participate as a member of the consortium, or we elect what's known as joint entitlement. Next slide. So full entitlement, as you can imagine with a federal program like this, the overhead in terms of administration and program compliance is fairly high. And in that situation, the city is responsible for all of the administration and compliance. So the staffing impact for that option is very high, and the budget impact is also very high, and the amount that the city actually receives is not sufficient to offset the staff costs. Next slide. Remaining in the consortium is basically the option that we've gone with the last 2 cycles, and in that situation, the city allows its amount to be blended with the amount for the rest of the consortium, and the city then, if it has a project that it wants to fund with Cdbg dollars, we go to the Policy Advisory Board with a proposal and we compete for it in the grant program. The staffing impact on that for preparing the grants is, not large, but it is high because each time you're proposing a new project and you're starting fresh. And then there is some budget impact as well. Next slide. Joint entitlement is a program that allows an urban county consortium or another consortium and a city that is eligible for entitlement on its own to agree to work together and essentially split the entitlement that would be due to the city. Under that arrangement, the city and county sign an operating agreement, and this says tonight's action. That's actually the action from April 21st that was signed. And under this arrangement, the county remains responsible for the federal program compliance and administration, and the city then becomes eligible for some programs based on entitlement. So 2 programs to mention just recently, within the last 2 years, that have been based on entitlement, one being the Metro Affordable Housing Bond, the second being CARES Act funding that was funneled into the Cdbg program. So had the city been entitlement during that time, we would have received a supplemental through the CARES Act. Next slide. So the process here is that the city is notified of its eligibility. That happened back in April. The city and county sign an operating agreement that sets out the terms of exactly how they're going to split the funds and what kind of programs are eligible. That was the action that the council took on April 21st. Tonight's action, the city formally accepts the entitlement and authorizes the city manager to sign the 2 intergovernmental agreements, and then we receive our first entitlement in July 2021. I do want to touch really quickly on those 2 different funds, one being Community Development Block Grant and the other program being Home Funds. Home is a separate fund that is nonetheless managed by the same office that manages the Community Development Block Grant Program. And it is the federal affordable housing program. And essentially, that program has such incredibly high administrative costs. Even cities that qualify for Community Development Block Grant entitlement do not typically opt for home entitlement if they have another option. So both Beaverton and Hillsborough still participate in the county consortium for home funds. The agreement related to home tonight continues the city's participation in the home consortium under the status quo. Next slide. So the operating agreement that the city agreed to on April 21st sets out terms that the city will retain 50% of its entitlement annually, and the remaining 50% stays with the county to cover administrative costs, and 20% is the amount that's authorized under federal regulation. And then the other 30% is split between public service projects through the competitive grants program, and then 15% to other programs like housing rehabilitation. The county agreed that we may carry over up to half of our entitlement in each year to the following year, so that we can do larger projects every other year, or if we just have an odd dollar amount left over, we can roll that over into the next year. And the city will retain its seat on the Policy Advisory Board. Next slide. So the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement was one of the key funding strategies for the city's affordable housing program outlined in the Affordable Housing Plan adopted in June of 2019. These funds can be combined with the construction excise tax revenue to fund affordable housing programs. And when we spoke in April, we were still looking at the possibility of down payment assistance through the Community Land Trust, and particularly to help preserve some housing proposed for disposition by the Housing Authority of Washington County, and also a program to begin ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, retrofits of intersections. Since that time, we are beginning to look at alternative uses for those funds, owing to the likely high need within the community that is possibly or probably going to linger well into fiscal 22 as a result of the COVID pandemic and public health emergency. So we don't know exactly what that may look like, whether it's rent assistance or other programs like that, but it is something that we are very carefully looking at right now. Next slide. So the staff recommendation is for council to finalize this work program that we have been on for the past several months, and adopt the resolution authorizing signing of those IGAs and notification to the HUD office. And with that, I'll end and take questions.
Councilor Anderson, any questions?
No questions. Thanks, Skylar.
Councilor Lube?
No questions.
Council President Goodhouse?
No questions.
Youth Councilor Turley?
No questions.
Councilor Newton?
No questions.
Is there a motion?
Councilor Lube, I move to approve resolution number 20-30.
Councilor Anderson will
second that.
Wow, we got the whole council there seconding that. Carol, do you have an official second there?
Well, I actually heard Councilor Anderson first.
Yeah, pick one.
Okay. Okay. All right, City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution 20-30, a resolution to jointly accept Cdbg entitlement with Washington County and remain a home consortium member.
City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes. Okay, resolution number 20-30 is adopted unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor
Newton.
Could I just make a quick comment? As the city's representative on the Policy Advisory Board, I'm really excited about this because this is another tool that we can use to advance some of the programs that we have in our community, especially around affordable housing and assisting those in our community that are housing challenged, and especially given recent events, if there's things that we can do to help our marginalized community. in that area. I'm just excited about the opportunities Tiger's going to have to address those. Thanks.
Thank you. We have no non-agenda items. City Manager Wine, did you have any administrative report?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't plan an administrative report tonight, but I think what I want to just say to the council on the topic that you discussed earlier regarding racial, race and justice actions that the city might take. It's my intention to work with the mayor to put time on future agendas for you to both discuss the ideas that you raised tonight. The mayor asked of staff related to his statement that we would be coming up with ideas and proposals and plans about what the city could do next. And so I just want to alert you or flag for you that you'll see that on a future agenda.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
We have no executive session scheduled. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Councilor Lube, I move to adjourn.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Councilor Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.
Night.
Have a good evening.